My name is Sara Zimmerman, and I'm scripty, sometimes booby. So, what drew me to Grim Whimsy was Alyssa, because I got to know her. But I would say the script is one of the strongest that I've really read and been able to look over and read. Trixie herself is such an ever shifting character, but also that she doesn't rely on her sexuality as a means of ensnaring basically her victims. She is very much strong. She's very calculating. She also uses makeup in a way that, we as women think of, kind of take for granted maybe sometimes, the art of putting on makeup and what that means to us, whether it's, concealing flaws or trying to be colorful in certain ways, or just, as a means of expression, it's particularly strong. But to see a character start out as this kind of meek person to some degree who is trying to just simply survive in the world, and to get a little snippet of that, and then to hear as the story goes on and unfolds her process of turning into essentially a villain and an antagonist, and that she doesn't waver. She is fully committed to her goal. She doesn't show mercy much at all. She just simply goes through and does what she feels is right and justifiable according to the treatment of her person by others. Without that, leather clad or spandex wearing type persona that we do see a lot in revenge type stories, that Trixie stands out, and Dr. Summers as well stands out, because he is kind of your average human being, what you think of. He doesn't come across initially as conceited, but as the story unfolds, you can see kind of that development, that he not only was initially predominantly placed in the medical field, which of course gives people certain liberties to maybe feel inclined to place themselves as sort of the authority. But then you get to see his arrogance kind of diminish in what you think you've learned. Okay, here he is. He's learned from his mistakes. But throughout the film, you're kind of left with that feeling, or at least I was. Has he really actually taken accountability for his actions? Has he really learned? Because you see the women in his life in particular talking to him, and he doesn't quite want to listen to them, and just how hard that can be sometimes to take the advice of others. Look at yourself and have that perspective of, how can I improve? What is it about myself that shapes the narrative of my life? It's a challenge. And to watch him struggle to come to terms with it, seemingly grasp it, but then take a couple steps backwards from that at the same time. What makes the script into a cohesive whole is, I feel, having a great story, depthful characters, a tightly woven narrative that is constantly changing to certain degrees of allowing for different levels of interpretation, but also that it's relatability. What universal experiences are within the script that are touched upon by the characters that you yourself experience as you're reading the script? And how does that affect you as a person? I see so many films reliant on CGI, but lacking in the character. And it's just painful to watch, because the visuals might be there, but what is it exactly that keeps you watching? Relatability to a degree, the realism, and certainly grittiness, which Grim Whimsy has. It's not a happy ever after story. It gets at really hard life experiences and what that means for each person involved, whether it's just this nurse pushing back against an authority figure. But we don't get to see that entire narrative. We do get to see some portion of it. And I think many people could relate to that. But additionally, what it means to live as somebody with mental health issues and to try to function in a world where you don't feel whole and you don't feel understood. I really enjoyed the female representation in Grim Whimsy because there is so much to pick apart, to dissect. I feel from that micro level to kind of that macro level, you get a sense of the richness and complexity of individuals as they, again, are all navigating the world, all trying to find their way to a certain degree. Some people have more of a set course than others, but that you get that opportunity to really take a look down the line of how this all transpired and what ultimately leads to the finale of the film. What I appreciate about Alyssa's style of directing is the clarity of her vision, but also the determination, the focus. I can't imagine wearing so many hats and coordinating and multitasking between so many different roles as what she did, but also feeling as though this film won't get done without her. Alyssa is an integral part of the film, but in a lot of ways, she's also not just the mind of the film, but the heart of the film, because so much of what goes on in Grim Whimsy is what she's brought to life during that process. And as a director, knowing the script as intimately as she did because she helped write it, the knowledge too of the working parts of film in terms of shot choices, in terms of, maybe not necessarily all the finer details of lighting, but actually researching that and going through that and working closely with Mike upon that to arrive at such a nice marriage of what's workable and what is suitable. Not only, I guess, was I impressed with Alyssa's style of directing in the sense of how exactly she can envision an entire script and bring that to life with her efforts towards getting the right people to work with her, pushing herself to complete the storyboards, pushing herself to reach out for feedback. Sometimes initially I felt it was a little challenging and it can be difficult, but that she opened herself up to that feedback where, even if I felt stupid for suggesting something, she would listen to me and she would hear all of us out and work with us, but also provide the guidance, which is sorely needed in film, because without a director who knows what they're doing, the film will fall apart. It's not going to have the structure. I mean, even if you have all the parts together of a house, unless you have that foundation, which is solid, it's going to collapse. And I feel like without that strong leadership, which I know can be exceedingly difficult, and that she wanted us to challenge each other, but also ourselves as well in what we thought maybe we couldn't do, maybe we could do. Important and meaningful messages that I hope viewers take away from Grim Whimsy is that of mental health and how many times people present themselves in a certain way, and underneath that appearance there is so much going on, or can be, but in terms of how even that's treated by both you as an individual being affected by it, but by the other people in proximity to you and how they interact with you, and how just in general there's always that ripple effect of what all is unfolding in any given moment. between two people or just even one person within themselves, and what it means to be a survivor and putting back the pieces of your life after a severely traumatic incident. And if that's even possible, because for some people it may not be. I think too what it means to listen genuinely to other people. There's so much of that throughout the film where you see people going through the motions of listening, but not really actually listening to the depth that maybe they should.